So let's start again. Hi, I'm Gilad Gershoni, and welcome to the lasting power of live streaming. I'm the founder of Elevated Stream and also the sound engineer for De La Soul. Why am I here? A little bit about me is I've been live streaming for a very long time, and I've worked with many, many different brands and startups and creators alike. I'm also the sound engineer for De La Soul and the founder of Elevated Stream. Now, how did I get here? I've been sound engineer now for over 20 years and touring the world, really finding that there's a lot of audiences that are unable to participate due to proximity, their geolocation, and live streaming came to me. And when I approached it and really implemented it into my practice, I realized that there's a way to connect people through music around the world through live streaming. Now, we know that live streaming has been here for a long time, but it's really exploded during COVID and 2020. And we believe, and I think you do too, that there's a lasting power of streaming and it's here to stay. And so, wondering if you should start doing and hosting live events, I think we all agree that the answer is yes. But don't take my word for it. Let's look at some numbers. Now, 232 million people tuned into a live stream. That's just last year alone. 57% of those people have expressed interest in returning to experiences even when things open up. So live streaming and hybrid events are definitely here to stay. 42% of those people are willing to pay to experience these educational or presentations or any kind of event that they may have in common. Half of the participants have expressed that they want to share this experience and invite somebody else. So not only have they, but they also want the opportunity to share this with their loved ones, their friends, their colleagues. And 61% of hosts of these events have found that creating live broadcasts really allows them to create content. Now, you can create clips after the fact and really focus on highlights of the experience. You can also turn just the audio only into an audio experience, like a podcast. And obviously, you can also create highlights for future events. $124 billion. That's the expected market size of live streaming by 2025. Now, that's a big number. And I think that that's pretty clear that people want to connect, people want to get involved, people want to experience. And even once things open up, hybrid events and live streaming have a big place in people's homes. So we learned, and I believe that live streaming is a powerful way to connect you with your audiences, have expanded reach, and allow yourself to create new revenue sources and bring in new profits by connecting people around the world. Now, let's take a second and talk about the basics and really to the pro tips. What we're going to cover today is really the setup you may need in different situations, what platforms that you can look at, we may know, and really how to start defining which one's right for you. And lastly, we're going to take a look at tips and tricks. So let's talk about how to set up for success. There's a couple different levels here. The first level is quite simple, and we all have a laptop or a phone, pretty modern, right? And so we're ready to start live streaming or even hosting an event. Think about educational or a cooking show or just a presentation, right? You're ready to go. So a smartphone and a laptop, maybe add a light, some good bandwidth is really all you need to get started. With level 2, this is really where you can start amplifying and adding external devices to your configuration. Like today, I have a clip-on mic, right, to help reduce the noises around me or unwanted sounds, but really to focus the sound to the words that I'm speaking so that you, the audience, can hear me as best and crisp as possible. Same with the camera. I have a DSLR connected and a couple lights to really help the camera accentuate myself and how you are able to view this entire experience. Now, you can definitely invest in other things, but level 3 really takes the next level up. Here's where you can start thinking about additional camera sources, right? Let's say you're a chef. You may want to have a camera on my face, but also on my hands and my knife techniques, right? Or maybe another camera on the stove. You may also need, in that case, a video mixer, right? To allow you to switch between these types of cameras and potentially add some on-screen graphics. Additionally, things like an encoder. Now, what is an encoder? It's essentially a computer. It's an appliance that allows you to connect your video and audio together and format it to ready for streaming out to any platform of your choice. And lastly, you can really talk about all these components and see which one's right for you. Now, the key takeaways, excuse me, is you don't have to rush to expand. You can really start simply and focus on your content and about your audience. And as you learn and as you experience the flow and the nuances, you can start to grow and expand. So let's talk a little bit about live streaming tools and platforms. There's definitely many choices out there. I think we've all been on a Zoom call or a Google meeting, right? We've definitely seen some YouTube videos along the way during COVID. So we're familiar with them, and so is our audience. And so there's a lot of different platforms out there that you can really hone in on what's right for you and your audience. A couple of things to consider is your audience size or your budget. Do you need privacy, or is it going to be a public event? But let's take it first step, an intimate event, one that you can manage yourself. Things like Zoom or Google Meets really allow for a smaller or an intimate vibe that allows you to really take control and not need additional resources to make this happen. You can invite guests on screen, you can have breakout rooms, and all those types of functionalities that we're used to. Now, if you want to expand your reach and look at some public events, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, they all allow us to really reach as many people as possible and give us that reach that's global and is presented in a way that anybody can tune in. And oftentimes you can share it across all these platforms at once, if that's right for you, to get the maximum reach. And as we said, also LinkedIn and YouTube are other platforms. So really understanding where your audience is or where you want to reach them at is really a part of the conversation prior to starting to produce the show. Now, if you really want a highly specialized event, similar to this one, which is more like a conference, right? It may be multiple days, multiple events, handout, breakout rooms. You can start thinking about these types of platforms. Now, they definitely increase time and budget for planning, right? And different resources, but they are very effective for instances like this. So once you have your platform, let's talk about adding an additional layer. These platforms here really allow you to control your content, invite guests, send the broadcast out to multiple destinations, and give you the flexibility of adding on-screen graphics very easily. You can do it yourself, and the learning curve is very low. So try it out. See if this is right for you. If you want to have a kind of conversational bet, right? A fireside chat or an interview. These are great tools to consider. So let's talk about a little bit of tips and tricks. Now, starting simple, as we discussed, using your mobile phone or a laptop, really focusing on the content is where I suggest to start. And testing. Now, I can't tell you enough. This is a live broadcast, right? Things that are happening live, anything can happen, right? Even at the beginning of the show, things happen, right? I tested for this broadcast a couple days ago and everything was solid. This morning when I tried to log in, the connection was a little bit problematic. It was a camera issue, but I worked through it and started early and was able to resolve my issues. And so you never know what you're going to experience. And I recommend testing every aspect of the flow from beginning to end, including the day of. Now, bandwidth is your friend. We want to make sure that we have internet connection that's strong enough to suit the quality of your video. As you can see, I have a certain camera here that has a lens and streaming 1080 out to you guys, 1080p, which is very high quality. I would need a certain bandwidth to allow for this. And if I had a lower quality bandwidth and tried to send out this kind of feed, you may start seeing buffering and problems with the playback. So if you know that your broadcast quality needs to change due to your bandwidth, reducing that quality might be your best option, or maybe increasing your internet connection quality. And there's many. I mean, even keeping your lens clean, right? Making sure that you know what's behind you and presenting a great professional look and feel is very important. This is, after all, a first impression. And I hope that you take it as seriously as any first impression, just like I do. And so I'm going to also talk about distribution, which we kind of talked about in the beginning, right? Which platform? Distribution is really talking about where your audience is going to be viewing this content. Today, you're on this specific platform. Tomorrow, you may be on a YouTube or Twitter watching an event. And really understanding, is your audience there? Are they already captivated in this content? And do you want to reach them there? And how do you target them? It's all about distribution. And allowing yourself to explore new platforms and expand that reach is all within the nuances of trial and error, and definitely looking at the results that you had and maybe adjusting it next time. So this is one thing that, from a tips and tricks, you're always going to be evolving. And taking it too seriously is stressful. Live streaming is stressful in its core. So really, the biggest tip and trick is try to keep it simple, try to keep it natural, and don't overdo it. Really focus on the content. And lastly, you can always get help from the pros, right? There's many technologists out there. There's video experts. There's streaming experts that can help you all around the world. They can help you on the day of. They can help you in strategizing, giving you some creative input. But essentially, if you need some help, definitely take some things off your plate to reduce the stress and to make sure that your event is going off in the best way possible. And so now we are here and we know where we're going. So what do you want to do with live events? How can I help you guys today in exploring this new world? And so I want to open it up for Q&A. Does anybody have any questions? Let's take a look here. So the first one from Dan. Have I ever used a multi-platform stream for events? Absolutely. I think that it's a great question because when we talk about reach, we want to make sure that all the different destinations that have audiences that are related to our topic can be heard and can be distributed to. So like StreamYard or Restream, they allow you a very simple way to connect to your platforms of choice, whether it's Twitter or YouTube and many others out there. You can use this platform just to send your stream out. Let's say you're using Zoom, you can stream your Zoom content to a restream and then multi-stream that out to multiple locations, destinations. Melanie asks, she's curious about Hopin as a platform. And I've heard very good things about Hopin. I know that they just acquired StreamYard. And so they're really focused on the creator and allowing users to not only create content, but really have an experience that's multifaceted, engaging, and allows you to pull in different elements that enhance your experience or the user's experience. I think they offer things like not only chat, but Q&A, polls, but other things like a store, right? You can sell merchandise or information about the speakers and others. Patricia is asking, what's the ideal platform for a conference? I did mention several. I think this one that we're on has been very fun to use as a presenter. It's been very easy to use. And I think based on the viewership here and people engaging, I think you would be a better kind of feedback for me as for an audience member and how you're experiencing that. I think the main thing to keep in mind is keeping it simple, making sure that if you're choosing something, you know how to operate it, or you have a team that can help you, right? Today, we have tons of people in the background working endlessly to really put this thing on. So it depends on the event and how you're trying to basically put on your conference, right? How many days is it? How many presenters are there? Things to consider, are all these moving parts. The more presenters you have, the more testing you may need to do with these individuals. And so that adds time. And so picking something that meets your need, not only from a professional and technical and feature standpoint, but also meet your timeline and needs that way as well. Vivian is asking, if we don't have a budget to pay for platforms or equipment, are there any free resources that we can use? Absolutely. So OBS is a platform. It's a software that you can download and it's free. It's essentially a video mixer and also an encoder. So it's going to composite or compile the video and audio out as a streaming format. This does allow you to bring in guests and obviously on-screen graphics as well. Excuse me. And so if you're doing an event, let's say, like I'm doing today, presenting, that's definitely a great tool to use, right? Even if you wanted to have an interview and bring somebody into the conversation, you can do so as well and bring in video assets. You can bring in slideshows and different other images, right, to fill the screen or other on-screen graphics, and really have control over that. That can be a software that can get very involved. There's many resources out there on YouTube and other that can help folks really learn the nuances of it, how to use it quickly, and also how to deep dive into it. So I recommend checking that out. But other platforms also have essentially a web tool that you can turn on your web camera and your audio mic, give permissions there, and you can start broadcasting just simply that way. So I encourage you to explore those avenues. There's many ways to do it with no budget at all. Let's look here. A lot of questions. Thank you very much, everybody. So Rebecca is hosting a town hall. And is there a free platform that allows multiple camera views at one time? Absolutely. So again, I think OBS is a great platform there. It allows you to bring in multiple guests or multiple cameras into that kind of environment. You may need to, depending on your production team or capabilities, you may need to bring in an external device like a mixer, a video mixer that would allow you to bring in all those different sources so that they can connect to your computer. For example, if you had 4 HDMI cameras, right, whether they're GoPros or webcams, USB, you can find a video mixer that would allow you to connect those cameras and then connect that mixer into your computer. So that way you can manually switch between those different shots. Some of these softwares, including OBS, allows you to also bring in cameras from like a mobile device, right? So you can use your mobile device or your company's mobile device as an external camera, right? And wirelessly bring that into OBS and use that as a source. One thing to consider there is really the bandwidth that you have, and if you're having on-site guests, they may be using their mobile phones as well. So bandwidth and knowing your network capabilities and limitations are going to be very important in that kind of situation. Mark, recommendations for a good starting encoder. Well, I think that there's many out there. You can definitely find some that are under certain price points, right? There's I kind of look at it in 3 price point tiers: the under 500 range, the $1,000 range, and then above that. Some that are out there are like a Teradek or a Live View. They have smaller devices that you can essentially just connect the camera right to. And they would connect either through Ethernet, or some like a Live View encoder would also allow you to connect like cell cards, essentially. So you can bounce and combine the 2 signals, giving you bigger bandwidth and also kind of a mobile capability if you're out in the wild. But there's many out there to consider, and the price points are really going to be the starting point to look at. And then second to that is the features you need. Another option for an encoder that I'm thinking is you can also have a standalone computer, right? And just use that as the encoder and not using it as a video switcher. So you can have 2 different computers, essentially. One as your video switcher and bringing in all the different sources, and then connecting that to the secondary machine, which is only using something like OBS or Wirecast and other kind of encoders available there. Where are we here on the list? Wow. All right. So curious. All right. Oh, Adriel, I hope I'm saying that right. You really bring up a great question around calculating bandwidth. So the rule that I like, so if we're talking about bandwidth that you would want to have ideal connection with internet for a broadcast, is you really, first of all, want to know what your upload speed is. So to do that, you can go to many different websites out there. One that I like to use is speedtest.net. We use that for this broadcast. And when you get to that website, you can run a test. It's going to first do a download, which is essentially what you can consume. And because we're broadcasting out, we really want to focus on the upload speed. And so wait until that full test ends to understand what your capability is. Once you know what your boundaries are, my rule of thumb is to essentially set your output bit rate, if you have an encoder that allows you to do so, at essentially half the total amount of bandwidth that you have. So let's say I have 5 megabits, right? 5 megabits upload. I would set my encoder to send out the stream at a 2.5 megabits per second setting. And that way, it really allows us to have, or the encoder to work in its best way possible. Because as the broadcast goes on, you know, things are moving around, my hands are moving around, or even when we switch to a video, that bit rate may change. And so we want to give enough headroom for the bandwidth and for the encoder to not glitch or over maximize itself. Looking more questions here. They're coming in very quickly. Thank you very much, everybody. Adriel, I hope that answers your question. I think that if you have, 10 megs or greater, just to kind of add to that, you can definitely start looking at a 720 or even 1080p and greater bit rate, right? So the more bit rate you have set it for the encoder and with your bandwidth, the more pixels essentially can be fed with your camera to the encoder and have a crisper image, right? So you may be able to see essentially the white of my eyes and kind of the light reflecting off of my eyes today. That's because of the settings that I have. And really just maximizing the lighting, the camera, the bitrate, and also the bandwidth that I have. So let's see. Jay is asking, do I know of any other platforms that allows me to utilize virtual backgrounds? Absolutely. There's several out there. One that I've been testing is and that's been a really fun platform and really easy to use for many different use cases. One of which is like sales presentations or giving a lecture like today. It would allow me to essentially highlight my video myself, but also easily green screen myself out, kind of like you could do in Zoom or Google. With it's their algorithms are really tight, so it's you may have seen in Google or Zoom that sometimes there's blurs that kind of catch. Where I've noticed it's really, especially if you have nice lighting, it really makes a big difference. And I know you had a second question, which is, we're looking at platforms, and figured out a way to balance out the sync of video and audio and music, right? Right now we're using Zoom. We want to make people co-hosts so they can share sound from their computer and play the music on their end. Absolutely, and sync from their location. However, this does not allow us to do duets and group numbers because they are out of sync. The old sync issue. Unfortunately, there's no great answer here from a remote solution. The technology today, essentially Moore's law, is going to prevent us from being able to be remote and sing together in real time. This is just the nature of the beast. The best way to do this, even if you wanted to stay distant, is to all be in the same location and have different cameras focused on the different people and having them have real-time communication. Unfortunately, the technology is just not there for us to do it. I've tried so many different ways to have musicians that I work with really dial in from all over the world, and even tried direct connections from house to house and musicians that were in the same town, and to reduce the type of sync and latency issues. But the industry has tried this as well, and there's just it's not fast enough. The sync is really going to be, even at 11 milliseconds, it's too much for a musician to be in sync with one another. And that's a big problem when it's all about feel and jive, right? And you're singing on time. I wish I had a better answer for you on that one, but if you find out, please do let me know. Looking here through a few more questions. So Helg asks, what do I think about using green screens? Um, I think they definitely have a time and a place. You know, when you're in a position where you need to present or have a certain look and feel behind you that you may not be able to accomplish with the situation where you are, I think that really gives a lot of options, right? Maybe seeing also creatives like musicians or DJs on Twitch using all kind of different graphics to make the viewer's experience really engaging and dynamic. So it really depends on what your content is, in my opinion, and what and how do you want to present that out to the audience. Green screens can be tricky, and the key that I've found is really having the right lighting system and choosing a color of your green screen that is not going to be in your clothing or in the other back, in particles of hair, let's say white, in my case, because that would also be um, getting chromed out, right, as a green screen. So I love green screens. I think they definitely can add a lot of character, a lot of capabilities, but also setting up your background like I did today, right? If it may just be right for you. And so I, before definitely spending the money on a green screen, play around with some of the digital ones. See if you can fine tune the lighting and the nuances on your end to make it work for you, and see if getting an actual green screen is going to work better or maybe enhance your experience. So Mel, you ask a great question. In the world of hybrid events, right, where they're going to be prominent and more are going to be happening, right? More people, more locations are opening up. Obviously, if we want to have a virtual aspect to this, how do we ensure that the online experience and the on insight and real life experience is an effective one? Um, this has been a really great area of experimentation, I find. And I applaud, schools today that have been able to reopen and have both online and in real life experiences because they're facing a unique challenge where students need to learn and have engaged experiences with their teachers. I know for my child and in our school, what they found is really having two parallel experiences. So in class, they have obviously the distance and limited amount of students in each room, clearly, and there's a teacher there teaching, but there's also a big TV screen with all the participants that are virtual. And the virtual people, participants, classmates, they can also see all the kids in the class. So they have a feeling of being inclusive, right? It's inclusive of the virtual participants, it's inclusive of the real life participants, and also they have a dedicated teacher that can really engage with both the real life and the virtual class. And so it really ties in both worlds in the best way possible. And so even the kids can interact with one another, right? If one kid has a question, the others can hear, and vice versa. And really, because you get to see the other students' expression and face, it really gives the best of a hybrid experience, in my opinion. Thank you very much for asking that. I think that that's really important, and one we're seeing even in comedy venues. We're seeing that more and more in different locations. So I think having that kind of presentation experience, that kind of dual world, it reminds me of when I've done live sound. Many people may not know, but there's two sound systems essentially. One is for the musician, so they can hear what they're doing and feel comfortable, almost like a playback monitor, but also for the audience, that when you go and enjoy the show, right, you get a great experience. So it's essentially doing something similar to that, where both the presenter and the guests have the best of both worlds, right? Regardless of where you may be. So again, thanks, Mel, for asking that. And I think as we evolve, we're going to see more and more, right? Things like AR and VR is going to really change the game here. And so, how that's going to play out is really, I find, the wild, wild west. And there's going to be a lot of things that we haven't even thought about that we can start implementing. So I implore you to explore and to try new things that may be right for your audience, and share it with the rest of the community so we can all learn from each other and have better hybrid events. Let's see what the next one is here. Yeah, so Peter asks about inserting advertisement between segments and streaming events to earn some income. I think this is a great question. There's definitely some platforms that allow you to insert, whether it's pre-roll or insert ads, mid-rolls as we call them. Excuse me. And it really depends on the platform of choice, right? Some platforms offer this, and you're just essentially going to need to pay for that platform as a service. There's many out there. Brightcove is one of them. There's Uyala and Kaltura and many that are kind of a professional white label solution that allows you to tie in these types of adverts. Really custom, right? You can do many things, and kind of, your world is your oyster. Your dreams are the only issue is how do you accomplish them and how do you tie them together. There are other platforms like YouTube, which if you qualify to be an affiliate, same with Twitter and Twitch, you can start inserting pre-rolls there, and based on the terms of service and their kind of guidelines, you may have to share in some of that revenue, but essentially that's a great way to get started. And there's other out there. I think that one simple way to do it is you can essentially have an advert that you can bake into the stream, right? If you need to have an advert and don't want to make it too complex, right, you can definitely have also on-screen product placement. So it may not have to be an advert, but it can also be a product that's placed in the shot, or that is a graphic overlay that can kind of flash in between. And things like a Restream Studio or an OBS will allow you to do those types of things as well, right? And so adverts can definitely get tricky, or you can simplify it, and depending on kind of how you want to approach that, there's many solutions for you to explore. So if we haven't done live, so this is from Vivian. Thank you, Vivian. If we haven't done live streams before, are there any step-to-step guides that we can get help to know what we're going to do or what we need to do? There definitely are out there many examples on YouTube and resources on LinkedIn. I think there's some courses out there, as well as you can work with professionals to really just get a quick 1 hour session with them, and they can give you a quick starting guide, right? I, for one, share often a startup guide with people that reach out to me, whether they're clients or just inquiring about easy to go and how to use. And I think education and getting people familiar with this content is how I got started, and really my passion around it is to help share this knowledge. So please feel free to reach out. I can help point you in some directions, or even share some of the tools and best practices that I have written down and share with many folks. So thank you for asking that. So we have, we answered that one. We answered that one. Let's see if there's more here. These are great questions, everybody. Thank you so much. I hope this is you're getting the answers you're looking for. I run a film festival. Yeah, Jack, this is a great question. I think oftentimes, we think of live events as having to be real time. And the question that you're bringing up is that you have a small film festival. It can be any size film festival, but essentially bringing video into the experience and really playing that back as the live event. I think this is a great way to, to first answer your question. I think that, yes, there's many ways to do this. OBS will accomplish this in a very free and easy way. You can definitely bring in videos into a StreamYard or OBS, Restream, and other tools such as those. You can also use things like YouTube. It has a very neat kind of premiere feature, right? That you can upload it and create a whole live experience around the launching of that video. So you don't necessarily need a software for that. You can just upload your video, and with some tweaks, you can have it. But really, if you want to have an event, I would go with some of the software that I mentioned. And I love this question because oftentimes we have content that we either produced or has been sent to us, and we can use those just as a kind of play one after the next in a playlist form to create that event. Oftentimes you may want to have a host to kind of set up and introduce and really transition into the next segments. But that is a great also way to repurpose your content, right? So if you did do an event such as this one today, we can essentially re-air this as a uploaded or video playback in real time to reach other people in different regions in the world, right? So you can do similarly to how traditional broadcasts on TV, they may go live and then they'll do the re-airing in different prime times of those regions for West Coast or Europe or wherever the rights are available. But they take those time zones into consideration. And doing the upload or using video, as you mentioned, even for your film festival, is a great way to do that. So thank you for that question, Jack. Let's see what other questions we have. Allison, you have a great question here about the benefits between live and pre-recorded. You know, the benefits, in my opinion, is really an engagement. You know, the live capability, it really allows us to engage like we're doing now, right? I am sitting here in Oakland in my office studio, and I'm not sure where you are in the world, but essentially it's allowing us to connect, right? And if it was just a video, streaming that live, you can still have an engagement in the chat, right? So having a host or a moderator and being able to be that brand voice in the chat is really important, right? So if you're just going to have a video play back, almost like Jack's question earlier about the film festival, if it's only going to be a video, then I would recommend having that communication channel, whichever platform you choose. There's many different options for the communication channel. Like today, we're using chat, right? And so having that brand voice there is really important to keep people engaged and to continue the dialogue and answer questions or really point people into the different links or other that they may be inquiring about, but really have that voice. After all, this is a community that we're gathering around like-minded folks, right? But also a topic that is of interest. So you get to meet new people, and you get to converse and learn new things from other people, even in the chat, right? I've done many events where the chat starts teaching me things or teaching other and answering questions that other people are asking in the chat. So it really becomes a community feel when it is live. You know, you can definitely upload a video and get those comments after the fact. But I think that the specialty or the nuance of going live, even if it is live with pre-recorded video, is that engagement capability. Now, one step that I kind of hinted at earlier is you can do a virtual hybrid solution, which is kind of what I like to call it. Maybe it's not in real life virtual hybrid, but it is all hybrid online. And what I mean by that is you get to have somebody like me that is presenting, and I could be the host, right? And say, welcome to the film festival. So excited to have you here. Our first film is going to be by X, Y, and Z, and let's take a look, right? And then we can roll it into that next video clip. Now, when it ends, you come back to me and say, what do you all think? Leave a comment, vote, etc., right? Share that content, right? If you really like that video or that the film, look out for it in a theater near you, right? All that kind of messaging that just a video would not express, right? And it also allows you to draw more questions, comments into the chat as the next video is going to be set up and played back. So a hybrid solution in this situation can really help as well, right? Bring in best of both worlds. And it doesn't have to be very complicated. It can just be somebody on a webcam saying hello and getting the show started. So thank you, Allison. I really appreciate that question. I think that, really at the end of the day, depends on, what you want the audience to take away, right? I think that live really adds many layers of senses and connectivity and engagement and retention that just a video doesn't capture in the same way.
Sorry, Gilad, we have to wrap.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to say thank you very much. I hope you took some good tidbits away from this. If you have any more questions, please do reach out at Gilad Gershoni on any social channel or at elevatedstream.com. Would love to continue this conversation. If you have any more questions, I know there's more coming in about VR and other technical specs. Please reach out. Would love to learn more and maybe work together someday. So have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the day. And thank you to Eventbrite and everybody working behind the scenes to make this possible.